Okay, today we're filming a blue car versus a red car. You know, conservative versus liberal, light colored gorilla versus dark colored gorilla. Yes, it's the GTS versus S video, which I've been trying to do for like a year, but people keep flaking on me.
Yes, this has been a bit of a challenging video to put together because people were a little afraid about what I might say. So huge thanks to the owners of these two cars, Tom from New Jersey in the Carrera S and David from New York in the GTS, for lending me your cars and letting me be as open and honest as I can be about these two models.
People are immediately going to go, well, Nick, you always trash the GTS. The GTS, you're going to hate the GTS, and that's not true. I love both of these cars, and they're both two of my favorites within the range at the moment.
Yes, if we take a quick look at the 911 range as it currently is, within the Carrera models, obviously the T, S and GTS are superior to the base, which is missing PTV Plus and manual transmission options. Within the high-end 911s, I find the T, S and GTS are just simply more engaging, sound better and have better options like rear-wheel drive and manual transmission, which frankly just make them better all-rounders than the Turbo and the Turbo S. And the GT3 models, well, they are awesome, they're often hard to get and really not that great to daily drive. So that leaves us with the three best models to fight it out.
So what are we going to be looking at today? To compare with the S, we're going to be looking at, is there more power? Does it sound better? Does it handle better? And the package options. Pretty simple.
But first, for these comparisons, I've tried to find two cars as close in configuration as possible. Both have PDK transmissions, both have sports exhaust, both have sport chrono. However, there are two small differences with the GTS that should be noted. Firstly, this car has the misleadingly named lightweight and noise insulated glass option for $1,250, which actually lets in more noise into the cabin. And the other difference is the 18-way Sport Seats Plus with Race Tech, which are noticeably more comfortable than the 4-way Sport seats in the S. Okay, enough of that preamble nonsense. Let's get started with the horsepower torque comparison. Interestingly, this is the first GTS 911 where Porsche has made no changes whatsoever with the engine. Both these models are mechanically identical. However, the official numbers show that the Carrera S should have 443 horsepower, 390 pounds-feet of torque. The GTS, on the other hand, has an additional 30 horsepower with 473 horsepower and 30 foot-pounds of additional torque, which should be a noticeable difference. Officially, this improvement is achieved through a boost in turbo pressure from 17 psi to 19 psi, and things certainly looked encouraging when I checked the boost gauges, and the GTS did indeed show 19 psi at full throttle and the S only 17. That said, from the driver's seat, swapping between the cars, I could feel no difference whatsoever. They feel exactly the same power to me. So we did a couple of drag races, speed tests shown here. Here we go. Okay, let's look at that again. As you can see, just off the line, the GTS actually loses a little bit of traction, which puts it behind momentarily. Here we go. At 70 miles an hour, it is 2 miles an hour faster than the S. And it gets to 100 miles an hour just slightly before the S, but there really isn't that much in it. As it turns out, these results aren't really a huge surprise, as I haven't heard anyone else saying they notice a difference either. And if you follow the dyno results of these cars, you'll notice these show only about a 5 or 10 horsepower difference at the wheels between these two models, both getting an estimated 495 to 510 horsepower at the crank, so still a lot more than the stated horsepower of either car. Next up, the sound. Now, every magazine and YouTube channel that has featured the 992 generation GTS has made a big deal about the improved sound. However, they all said much the same thing, so I was a little suspicious that they're just parroting the vivid imagination of the Porsche marketing department. Certainly, just driving around back roads or on the highway, there really is no difference between these two cars. However, at open throttle with the PSC on, there is a change in tone. Let me play both for you a few times. Yes, to my ears, both in the car and through the camera later, there seems to be an additional resonance in the GTS. It's quite subtle, but it is there. What do you guys think? Anyway, let's call this a win for the GTS.
I certainly noticed a difference in the ride in the GTS. In normal mode, with everything in comfort, this is a much sort of joltier ride. And that's no surprise, because by Porsche's own numbers, this is a much firmer setup.
Okay, onto ride quality and handling. This is where I noticed a difference immediately, which is no surprise, as from Porsche's own data sheet, they have dialed up the dampening rates to twice as stiff on the GTS, and you feel this as soon as you set off. In normal driving roads, on back roads and on city streets, even taking into account the more comfortable seats in the GTS, the Carrera S has a noticeably more pleasant ride. A small bump in the road and the Carrera S takes it in stride, whereas the GTS tends to crash over it. When in sport mode, however, and pushing the car, I found the GTS to be more compliant than the S. And I feel that the GTS would be more at home on the track than the S due to these stiffening adjustments. So these changes are more a matter of taste. Do you want your 911 to be sporty but able to be a little more comfortable around town and on back roads? Then the S is for you. Or do you want your 911 to be track focused and fairly firm even in normal mode? Then the GTS is for you. And finally, let's talk about options. Not that this is really a comparison to the S, it's just that the GTS comes standard with a lot more options baked in, so we should really touch on that. So starting with Sport Seat Plus 4-way, this car's got the 18-way. Sport Chrono, if you're getting PDK, otherwise the manual transmission cars come with Sport Chrono standard. Sports Exhaust, which is a popular option. The Sports Design Pack, obviously standard with the GTS and optional on the S, of course. PDLS lights, clear rear tail lights, also very GTS. And of course GTS on the side. All of those options add up to about $10,000 or $13,000 if you include the Sport Chrono, but there's a few things that are GTS only as well. First is the upgraded brakes, the 408 6-piston brakes from the turbo. And bigger brakes are always welcome, but it's not like the S model isn't completely over-braked anyway, so I'm not sure how much difference this is going to make to most people. And of course the silly center lock wheels, which are not an option on the Carrera S. Center lock wheels, love them or hate them, they are a standard item also on the GTS. And of course the suspension changes on the GTS and a package called the lightweight package, also available only on the GTS but not standard on the GTS. So there's two ways to look at this. It's nice that so many options are baked into the GTS, but it's also nice to have options a la carte so that if you don't absolutely love an option, you don't have to pay for it, like on the Carrera S. So what is my conclusion? Well, here in the US, the GTS is $20,000 more than the S. Is it worth it? Let's go over what we've reviewed, starting with the power upgrade. And while I do think there is a small increase in power, it is so slight that it is not noticeable to the driver, so this totally deserves a fail. As for the sound, I do hear a difference, so let's give this a pass. For ride and handling, I do think this is more taste dependent, so maybe not a pass, more a question mark. And for package, this car does pack a lot more standard features, so let's give it a pass. So overall, a bit of a mixed bag, but the GTS is still one of my favorite 911 models. However, I would like to see Porsche try a little harder for the next generation. When they make an effort, the GTS models can be genuinely something special. Just look at the current 718 4-litre GTS. So worth the $15,000 bump over the 718S models. Yes, this generation GTS 911 is a little too parts bin special and no effort to invest any real engineering. Instead, they just relied on automotive journalists and YouTubers to parrot moronic statements like the GTS is a mini GT3 and the GTS is the sweet spot. So cringe, and often from people that frankly should know better. Anyway, I'd love to know what you guys think. Have I been fair? Do you think Porsche should try harder? Is the GTS value for money, or is it just a fool's paradise? Please do comment, and of course, as always, thanks for watching everyone.